What even made you look into the numbers for long-term subs across Michigan?
Well, one of my colleagues, Ron French, who covers education for Bridge, he had covered the Benton Harbor situation where the state was considering taking over the school
Right.
for poor performance and in their inability to pay. And one of the things he found out was that last year, over 40% of their teachers were long-term substitutes, that they could not find fully certified teachers to take positions. And in finding that out, they said, well, what's it going to be next year? And they said, well, so the current year is going to be 60%. And so I reached out to the Office of Educator Excellence, and I said, do you have this data? And they said, yeah. And so they gave it to us, and I realized that, for the 4 years preceding 3 years ago, it was like 200 long-term subs statewide had a permit. And that's covering, your teacher who goes on maternity leave, someone who has a medical leave, they're dealing with a family issue or a health issue. And then real quickly in the last 3 years, it went to 2,500. So you have, now there's nearly 100,000 teachers in the state, but still that kind of a quick tenfold increase made us realize that there was an issue. And beyond that, it's just where they were. They were in the schools typically where the students were already low performing. They were in schools where the districts were cash poor, like a Benton Harbor. And then we found that over half of them were in the charter schools, and charter schools only educate 10% of the students in the state. So we realized there was a little bit of an imbalance there, and so that's why we kind of dove into the topic.
So when you look at the numbers and you look at how it's increased in the last several years, why is this happening?
Well, everyone talks about that there's a teacher shortage in Michigan, that there's not enough teachers with the proper credentials to fill all the classrooms. There's some debate about that. I mean, there are a lot of teachers who are just on the sidelines. They've taken other jobs. The economy has improved. You can make a whole lot of money now with those kind of skills. Someone who can manage a classroom, who can educate. I mean, a lot of employers would really like to have these people. So you have a situation where they're having other opportunities beyond the class, and some are just not wanting to do a job that has had pay freezes, has had benefit declines. There's, the respect for the teacher in the classroom has declined. It's not the attractive job that I think a lot of people thought it was 30 years ago when I was in school, where you got out of college, you went into the classroom, you taught for 30 years, you retired at 55, and you had, had this great life. Those kind of all have combined to diminish the pool of teachers. And then those schools that we saw the largest increase in subs were the ones who are probably paying the less. Benton Harbor, which doesn't have the resources. The charter schools, we talked to a teacher who made 32 in the charter schools. He switched to another school and made 40.
And that's a significant difference for people.
$700 a month, if that's my math real quick, is real money. I mean, I don't think anyone would, that's someone's rent payment. And Detroit, which did have a problem, locally here in Metro Detroit, they, Nikolai Vitti, when he comes in as superintendent, he realized there's a big problem with pay. They've had freezes. They were not increasing people, and so he worked with the teachers to restructure the contract. And one big component is they created a pool where if you come into the district, you can get a $3,000 hiring bonus. It helped Detroit, but I think it caused a lot of the charters in the area to kind of scramble. So then they had to reach out to people who just maybe had a bachelor's degree and an interest in math or an interest in Spanish to lead classrooms. So they didn't necessarily have the proper training in classroom management and teaching.
All right, so we have this change, and we know that there are more long-term subs in the classroom that we've seen before in the state of Michigan. What is the impact now that we're seeing on students and their achievement when they have this kind of transience, really, and not the stability of having that same person in front of the class?
Well, the test results, the rise has been so quick, you couldn't say because this happened. It's just not enough time to really dive into those numbers. But anecdotally, talking to 4 students who had a lot of long-term subs, and what we found was they would lose interest in their class because the teacher didn't have control of the class. So there was a lot of talking, there was a lot of discipline issues. And then once they lost control, then they'd leave. Then there's another sub. And I talked to one gentleman at a charter academy on the near west side of Detroit, who his chemistry teacher, might have known chemistry, but he couldn't teach it. And so every day he had to go home and teach it himself on YouTube. He found a lesson and he did it, and he said, everyone in his class who wanted to pass that class had to go to the extraordinary effort of teaching themselves it using YouTube. And as he said, everything's on YouTube, and apparently even chemistry is.
And you don't want to have to drive the kids though after
Yeah.
they've been in the classroom, or to say you've got to have it in
Sure.
you to be motivated enough to find that. So what has the reaction been to the story and seeing a lot of the data points here, and because there's no legislation that says you can only have X amount of long-term
Exactly.
subs in a district. They can really pretty much do whatever they have to do to plug a hole.
Well, we ran the story, while the state is still talking about the budget. They have not come up with an education budget. Any solutions would probably require more money. And, a lot of Democratic legislators were outraged. They couldn't believe that this was happening. The State Department of Education was fairly defensive and said, we allow it, and this is where we are. They did not criticize it. So I think the solutions are going to have to come from the legislature. It's going to involve money. But one thing I wanted to mention was, you're not seeing these teachers in a district like an Okemos or a Troy or Utica where I grew up. You're not seeing them in Birmingham. They have the money to make sure those people are covered. It's only in districts, for the most part, where with lesser resources. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think those are the kids who need the best teachers.
And would benefit most from
Sure.
having that continuity.